Total Disclosure by Pop Culture Corner, a new show that I've been doing. This will be episode 3, and I'm joined today by Cheryl Costa. I was going to go down the list and say, everything you've done, but I figured maybe I can let you do such things because, you have a laundry list of titles associated with you. So, Cheryl, why are you interested in this topic? What led you here? What's your background? Starting so we can get introduced.
For UFOs?
For everything.
Oh, that gets complicated. Okay.
Well, your career path. What are you known for?
Okay. Professionally, I produced industrial films for a number of years. It was IBM Federal Systems that division got bought by Lockheed Martin. Okay. But I produced films for them for 5 years, but I had this extensive military background, particularly in nuclear submarines, back when I was a boy person. And we'll qualify that for your audience. And a division of Virginia, I was working in upstate New York, called me up one day and said, you're a qualified submariner. We need to talk to you, and next thing you knew, they flew me down for an interview. And next thing you know, I had a job in Manassas, Virginia. So, but total, my IBM time and Lockheed time altogether was 32 years with the company. And I did everything from produce those movies to work in, I worked for a group in the corporation called, we were called SITE. It was the systems field support for nuclear submarines, sonar particularly. So my red phone would ring and it'd be some admiral who said, my submarine in Italy's broken. My submarines in Scandinavia is parked in Bergen, Norway, and it's broke. Put somebody on a plane and get them there with parts and tools for this problem, and that's what I did. And I worked with all these field service techs that serviced all these military contracts. And I did that for about 5 years. In fact, it was in their shop that I transitioned from boy Cheryl to girl Cheryl. Right. And it was complicated because I had a high security clearance. At one point, the government guy came into me and I was still about 3/4, either way. I had permed hair, thinned eyebrows, double pierced ears, that type of thing, wore a little bit of mascara, still wearing the white shirt and tie kind of look, and the IBM white shirt and tie. And the guy said to me, he says, we're going to take your clearance away because we think you can be blackmailed. And I said, all my neighbors know. And they said, yeah, but the guys in the office don't. You haven't shared it with them. We think you can be blackmailed. I said, I can fix that. He said, we doubt that. So I said, when are you coming back again? He said, 2 weeks. I said, fine. I'll be in 2 weeks. We will meet. And I guarantee you, I will have fixed it. And he said, I don't believe it, but I'll see you in 2 weeks. Then I'll shut your clearance off. 2 weeks later, I come back in and I throw a VHS tape on the table. And I said, on the redhead, on Gary Collins, on the blonde, on the da-da-da. He said, you came out on national television in the last 2 weeks? And I said, yeah, I can't be blackmailed. I made VHS copies and gave it to all the guys in the shop. They went home and watched it with their wives, Okay.
Talk about the initial troll. That was it right there. That's a great part of me is a little bit aggravated that we ever lived in a world where someone would say that to someone or thought that. But I was reading a little bit about you. Now, are you partially responsible for the word transgender?
Yeah, wow. Actually I am. By me coming out to those government research clearance guys, yeah. Suddenly that, and what had happened was I had done a couple of magazine articles, but we did it under a pseudonym. Okay. And my spouse of that era and I talked this over, and he says, well, if they're going to hold your job and your clearance over your head, hell, let's just come out, Right. So that got us suddenly on the circuit. Back in the 80s, there was all these smaller talk shows. It was called People Are Talking, was the series, but it was local hosts who were running the show along a certain format. And it was before Geraldo turned it into the circus and
Oh,
you know,
but
that
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
So what happened was I was a member of the board of the International Foundation for Gender Education out of Boston.
That's where I
And
live.
okay, this was out in oh, it's a little bit west of Boston. I'm forgetting the name of the place now, but it was a suburb. And there were about 6 of the 11 of us that could handle national visibility.
Right.
Okay. And the problem is every time we either went before an editorial board for like an editorial feature story or a magazine story or something like this, we always had to use these clinical terms like transsexual, cross-dresser, drag queen. These were all clinical terms in the DSM-3 in those days.
Yeah, unflattering.
Yeah,
You know, in a way.
and it was always, and they always had a lot of baggage attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about the idea, maybe we can come up with some umbrella term to kind of cover everybody. And there was a medical doctor who was in transition as well on our board. And she said, why don't we just do a big umbrella term like transgender? And we all thought about it over coffee and said, yeah, okay. So as we went out and started, the 6 of us who were really out, started doing all these national talk shows and regional talk shows, magazines, editors, you name it, we did it. We got it in over a 5-year period. We got the term transgender in the lexicon. In fact, the State University of New York at Albany has taken my papers. I'm considered a social activist of note. Yeah, I'm right up there with Susan B. Anthony.
Right. That's when I posted it to Twitter, I put activist in because I was like, you know, out of all the things that, you know, you've done, that's always, you know, it was listed last. And I was like, that's one of the biggest achievements of, you know.
Well, wait a minute. Okay. There's a couple of paths here. Okay. This was in the 80s, early 90 timeframe.
Right.
Around 92, there were so many people now coming on like America Online at that time and already starting to see stuff out on the raw internet.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people, there a lot of new people coming up in the trans community who thought they knew it all, chased me and a couple of the other dinosaurs out. So in 92, I walked away because they were saying, oh, you're a dinosaur, go away, you know, and I was very seriously taking the risks 10 or 12 years before when they were happily in the closet, you know.
Yes.
Right. And so that was where that went. So I basically turned my guns someplace else. And my guns were turned on corporate America. And from 1994 to 2003, actually 2004, I lectured twice a year at this University of Maryland at College Park in their sex ed program. I did a gender talk twice a year, typically to about 350 to 500 students. It was one of those auditorium kind of classes. And it was always a hit because like I said, I shoot from the hip, short of my ATM pin, I'll tell you anything, you know. Right. And they were, let us say, shocked at my candor, you know. And all these people went off and graduated, and a lot of them ended up in HR departments in major corporations. And the last really cute thing that goes with this is just before I retired from Lockheed, this person from HR comes to me and says, hey, I went to this thing out in San Francisco, you know, and they did, there was this one talk there where they helped a major corporate officer transition in gender, you know, in their company and how they handled it and how they did it all smart and everything. And our guy from our company, Lockheed at that time, said, wow, how did you guys get so smart? And he looked at the guy's badge. He says, you work for Lockheed? He says, yeah, well, she works for you, you know? And the next thing we know, he says, well, can me and a couple of the HR vice presidents get together with you? Can you tell us how well we're doing with diversity for trans people in the company? And I said, sure. And I says, well, how well are we doing? I said, well, let's see, 4 years ago, I knew 25 people. Now I can only find 3 of us. Oh, I said, now think about this from a diversity standpoint. If 88% of the Black culture or the
Mhm.
Hispanic culture left the company suddenly.
Right.
Wouldn't alarm bells go off? And I said,
Many.
well, yeah. And I said, well, that's what you just had with the trans community, fellas. They said, well, what are we doing wrong? I says, you still got that draconian thing in your medical plan that says you won't cover this stuff.
Right.
And it's not just from people like me, but you've got all these other employees out there who've got trans kids coming up and they're coming out and they want to change. You're not treating us and those families with the same equality that you preach to everybody, equality in pay and benefits.
Agreed.
Oh boy, it was like an arrow through their heart.
Right. Because what do you say to that?
Well,
You've been, clearly the company is in the wrong at that point and they know that there's a problem, but people like that have a hard time admitting fault or responsibility.
Well, I can never get in anybody's office to tell them what was going on.
Right.
I was watching all these people falling out of the company one way or another, getting a better offer someplace else. Okay. So the bottom line was about 2 weeks after, I'm going to say it this way, 2 weeks after they retired me out, but it wasn't targeted at me. They started with the 45-year project managers, came down the hall to the 40-year project managers,
Right.
came down my hall to the 30 to 35-year project manager, says, you're retired on Friday,
It's like, okay.
Yeah, something, I don't know how, I've been retired now for 12 years. And it's funny. I don't know how I found the time to go to work, to be honest with you. But the bottom line was I changed it for that company. Okay.
That's amazing.
And now let's go back on a different track, my mystical track, my spiritual track.
Right. Before you do that, I just want to say, because this is what I wanted to get in there from, before we go off Earth, right? I just want to say, as a straight white male, I appreciate what you've done for people, for diversity, and just your ability to put yourself out there to maybe make it better for the next person. Because if we didn't have people like you, I don't know where we'd be right now. So from me to you, I have so much respect.
Thank you.
So just keep doing what you're doing. I think that's a little late for that one, but
well, I'm doing it for the UFO community. But let's go to the mystical track.
Yes.
Okay, I was raised Roman Catholic. I was a good Catholic boy back in the day. In fact, everybody thought I was going to be the one that was going to go to seminary.
And what is that? I'm sorry, I'm not
seminary. That means you're going to go to college to be a priest.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And by the time I turned 17, I had lost the faith. And it was complicated. And the bottom line was I grew up in a family of, it's easy. This is the easy way to say it. Clairvoyance runs on the maternal side of my family.
Really?
And
now, for anyone who doesn't know, so clairvoyant is the ability to actually. Can you want to just explain it?
We see the world very differently, and if someone's dead, I can't tell the difference between them and you.
Right.
Okay, or I can now, but back when I was a kid, I couldn't tell the difference. My grandmother was a high somebody in the spiritualist church, and from like time I was 4 or 5 years old, my grandmother over there with her friends, when I visited, stayed over for a couple, like a holiday weekend or something, her and her friends were over there levitating tables with the ghosts and stuff, so it was crazy childhood. The nuns began calling me the spawn of Satan because my clairvoyance, I would tell my friends in school, what they were going to get for their birthday, and they always got what I told them,
Right.
And the nuns wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole.
They always, and that's another thing that bothers me is, and we'll get into this a little bit later, is the assumption that these craft, these abilities, anything, it's automatically demonic every single time.
Well, that's 5 centuries of medieval church bad propaganda.
Right.
Okay, but I don't want to go there. I can do a whole show on that. Save that for another time. Believe me.
We will.
So the bottom line was, in the 1980s, I had. Well, okay, let's go back to the Navy. I'm in the Navy in the 1970s, and I'm well read on psychic stuff because of my own gifts. Okay. And bump into this other sailor, and I recognize the pendant that he's wearing around his neck. And I said, "Oh, you're a member of such and such." And he said, "Yes." And the next thing you know, we got to be great shipmates, pals. And he introduced me to Gardnerian witchcraft, Wicca. Okay. And then over the years, I evolved to a couple of other traditions and such. And so at this point, 44 years later, I am a grand queen priestess, as they say. And I also spent midlife 7 years in a Buddhist monastery. I had the buzz cut. I wore Dalai Lama style robes every day to work at Lockheed headquarters.
Oh, wow.
Pushed the diversity policy to the bleeding edge.
Yeah, they were definitely keeping an eye on you.
Well, no, they actually they objected to me working at headquarters. They didn't like the image because they're all walking around charcoal suits. Until one day, I worked in corporate security, and I was electronic security, computer security, and somebody had stolen some laptops. So I went over to investigate. I'm walking down the hall with my clipboard and my Buddhist robes and everything. And these guys that were part of the Defense Department in Taiwan were walking along down the hall with two vice presidents and a marketing vice president. And they see me, and they're throwing these guys in charcoal suits. Asian guys were throwing themselves on the floor, bowing to me. I'm a Lama.
Oh. Wow, I didn't even think of that.
I'm an ordained yogi. Right. Okay. So here we go. Oh. And I'm going, I'm going to hear all about this. This is not going to be pleasant. Whose office am I going to be pulled into? But I reached in my pocket, pulled out this little silk scarf, and I offer it to them, which is a gift ceremony. They each came up, took the scarf, kissed it, put it around their neck, and then they give it back to me. And then I gave it to the next guy. So I go through this like 12 times with these 12 guys, right? And then I toddle off, waiting for the hammer to fall. And a couple of days later, a marketing VP comes into my office over in the other, what we call the ghetto at headquarters. And he came into my office and says, we used to object to you walking around in headquarters. Don't worry about it anymore. Why? You just made big points with Taiwan with us for us. So I said, great, and that's kind of where that went. So I've been in mysticism since I was little, to one degree or another. And when you get into UFOlogy, which I got into after I got out, retired. Okay, after I got out of Lockheed Martin, I retired in 2011, September 2011. Okay. Went to work for a newspaper. Also went back to college to finish a 40-year-old bachelor's degree. Okay. Because I couldn't afford to pay for the degree back when I was working for them, because it did not support. IBM paid for the degree. They didn't care. My college classes. Lockheed had this opinion. It had to be something they could immediately use. So if it was an engineering degree, they would have been happy to throw money at it. Right. But when they heard mine was in arts and entertainment, they
can't use that. Yeah.
No, not. It didn't matter that I used to make industrial movies for them, But okay, so the deal was, how do I want to say this? I was one night, this was November 5th, 2012. We had just got the a 700-ton Swiss press running the morning edition. All me and the rest of the crew have to do is wait for the run to be done, 90 minutes, 2 hours. Okay. If there's no technical problems. Right. My department that I work for in tech, we handled the electronics, but because I was an electronic technician, but we also were responsible for making the plates every night. And the plates for a modern press, are done on like a laser printer type of thing. It looks like a cookie sheet with no edges. Photographically etches in, you run it through a bath and all that stuff. Okay. All right. The bottom line was, the press was running. I went on web, took a quick look at CNN.com, and there was this little sidebar story that said, remember, I'm well read on UFOs since I was 12. Okay, all through high school, all this stuff. My mother and I got books in the library, read them. Our copy of Von Daniken's Chariots of Gods in the late 60s was beat to death because she dog-eared on the top, I dog-eared on the bottom. Okay. And so what happened was this November 5th, 2012 CNN article, 150-word article. UFOs have been declining since the 1980s. Maybe they were always just an urban legend. I think that feels like misinformation.
Yeah.
Now,
because we know that's not to be the case.
Right. Well, the thing was, I had to keep it close to my chest because since I was in the military since 1970, I had been either in the military or tied to the military in the military industrial complex. I had a high clearance, and you can't come out with that kind of stuff with the clearance, right?
Exactly. And I mean, do you think, with what they're doing now, are you happy to see how far we've come? Because, congressmen, those people don't have to go into skiffs anymore to talk about this, right? It's
No, they still do. There's the really good juicy stuff is still in the skiff.
Right.
But look at it this way. I interviewed Lou Alessandro 3 times back when I had my newspaper column. Okay. And during the course of which, the first time I interviewed him, they had a guy, one of Tom DeLong's public relations people, was sitting there like a nanny on listening on the phone call. So I had restrictions on what I could talk about. Okay. Well, I met Lou at a MUFON convention, and we had coffee and we talked and everything, a couple different things. But the key thing that came out of it, at one point I looked at Lou, if you've ever seen Lou Alessandro talk, he's always got that very stoic look.
Very, very, very stoic.
Very stoic, and
career military man look. That's what I call it.
Well, I had 10 years, but I mean, this guy he had a good reason. He was hardened. And so I looked at him and I said, I know you can't go into the deep compartmented material. Mm-hmm. I understand compartmented material. I had those kinds of clearances. He just nodded. I said, so I'm not going to ask you the questions everybody else is asking you. I'm going to just ask you one. Actually, it was 2. I said, I don't find them hanging out around nuclear power plants, but I suspect they're really hanging out around the advanced technology of nuclear weapons. And he nodded his head. I said, fine, enough. I said, then the other one, I said, you theoretically had the clearance to pick open all of those other compartments, all those other things going back 70 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I said, was it worth it? And what the kid, question. he looked, it's all I wanted to know. He looked like a kid on Christmas morning.
What a question.
Yeah. It was worth it. It was worth the read. I said, did you find everything? He says, no. People cataloged it very weird. And I said, the government's been known to that. The wrong secretary classifies it under something, and it's lost forever because somebody's got it classified under shoes or something,
Right.
You don't know what it's under there as. And my spouse, we're both former military or former government contractors. So we both get this. Linda and I both get this. So that was the bottom line with the whole thing. So I finished up this arts and entertainment degree, and I started, after reading those articles, wasn't long after that, and I went around, pitched a bunch of editors, including the paper I worked for, and I said, I'd like to write a weekly column for you about UFOs. Mm-hmm. I got laughed out of the office. I got chased out of offices. I got escorted to the door by security. 6 different editors, baby. No. Then I get a phone call from a guy who was retired out of the paper that I worked for and was now the editor-in-chief at a little weekly in town. He said, Larry called me up. He said, come on over, Cheryl, let's talk. So for 20 minutes before I got to show him anything of my proposal, there's only 5 sheets of paper. He says, I get it. I'm sympathetic. And as we talked, we realized we were about the same age. We both had read the same books in the late 60s, early 70s. Okay.
Right. So
he said, I'm the editor-in-chief. I can't write that column, but you can. I'll try you out for a month. And he had this tone, he says, I'll try you out for a month. About 4 weeks later, he's got the 4 of the 5 articles I sent him. And these were only 500 words. Okay. And he calls me up on the phone. He's got this tone like the Princess Bride, Dread Pirate Roberts, almost likely to kill you in the morning, And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Get over here. We have to talk." I go,
Oh, no.
Okay. So I come walking in. I'm 10 minutes late. The parking lot's all dug up. I couldn't find a place to park. And I come in 10 minutes late. There are all the columnists from the paper around this board table. And he's standing there talking to him. And I walk in, he stops, looks over at me and points at me and says, "There's our rock star."
What? No, complete U-turn.
And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "You've been here a month. You've got more page views than all of them combined."
Woo. That's, I mean, there we go. There it is. Analytically,
there's the topic matter people want to read about.
That's that exactly, because something about the otherworldly, paranormal, extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, something about it fires some sort of neurons in our heads that keep us wanting more, or to seek out answers. And that's, what I find the most fascinating.
We had grandmothers read it, see it on their little iPad or on the computer in the morning while they're having their coffee and a cigarette, and they're sending it off to their kids and their grandkids.
Exactly.
And it just kept proliferating. Well, 6 months later, the digital editor calls me up on the phone. He was my interface. I was always a freelance. I was never an on-salary person. I was paid as a freelance. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he calls me up and he says, "We can measure this at the server. You're pulling a national audience." Wow. This little dinky weekly paper in upstate New York,
Right.
We said, "Oh, okay. This is the one you got that you want to know, that they're still selling tickets to the concert,
right,
this kind of thing." And it was a free newspaper. You pick it up at any
like those little boxes. Yeah.
Yeah. You know exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we're bringing in a national audience on a very local upstate New York paper. And when you were writing about UFOs, what were you writing about? Like cases? Were you researching events that happened, sightings that happened?
Yeah. Everything I did. Initially, I was crawling through both databases, and a lot of times in the databases there would be a single line thing that, "Wow, we saw something really cool last night," and that's about it.
Right.
But every now and then there was some narrative. Now I had a deal with my boss. Because of the stigma, neither one of us wanted to out anybody.
Right.
So you go online and look at the New Fork, they don't tell you who it is. So the dilemma we had, a newspaper, who, what, when, where, why. If I could tell you why and could verify it, I'd be getting a Pulitzer and a Nobel Prize, okay? And who, we can't tell you who because they're not telling us. And even when we found it, they wouldn't let me see the deeper record. I could only see what they considered a sanitized record. So my boss and I agreed that since my degree was not in pure journalism, I have a degree in entertainment writing. So I could take a little license, and he was okay. So if I said Bob and Susie were on the hood of his 57 Chevy watching the sky when they saw da-da-da-da-da-da, okay? It wasn't Bob and Susie, and it wasn't a 57 Chevy. Okay, I usually filled those kinds of things to make a fatter story, but the story, everything to do with the account related to the sighting was exactly as it was reported.
You put a more human touch on a story that other words wouldn't really have had it, and that's exactly what a good article will do. So, was because before I had talked to you, I had said there was probably an event that triggered you to go to that way, but it sounds like it was your upbringing that kind of steered you towards the unknown.
Okay. Let me tell you the story that goes with this. Okay. Back in 2012, a year before I started writing the column in July of 2013. Okay. Weekly column. All right. In 2012, just about a year before, I had come home from the other newspaper I was working with. Okay, 3:00 in the morning. The presses were done. We go home.
Yep.
I put the car in the garage. If it was a clear night, I would put the garage door down, look over my neighbor's fence up north, and on a clear night, there was the Big Dipper Park there, usually.
Amazing.
Okay. So I lived in a Buddhist monastery, so I was used to this idea of doing a couple of minutes of standing meditation, clearing the crap from the night. Okay. Especially on nights when we had a heck of a time getting the paper out. The paper would jam or something, or the one of the rolls of paper would rip. We'd have to go back to a certain number of newspapers and start over again. It was crazy. So I was doing that, and I'm sitting there this one particular night in June, and I start hearing this sound,
Like a
humming,
like a low pitch hum.
It was a low pitch hum, but it had a pulsing quality to it.
Oh.
And I looked up above me, and the stars were blotting out. And I noticed it had a sharp point to it. And then the more I realized, oh my God, this is a triangle flying over me at probably 1,500 feet.
Oh, God.
And I stood there watching this thing. And, it's got the classic, if you talk to Dave Marler, it's got the classic look, the three big light things on the back, the red light on the bottom, and it's 2.5, 3 stories deep. It's got to be a little over a football field long. And it just casually going along. It felt like 35 or 40 miles an hour, just casually going along. And I watched it going off into the northwest and just, I got a cell phone. I was standing there with my jaw hanging out,
That's another thing.
Shock and awe. Yeah.
It takes over. There's almost like something that's, when you see something like that, you can't take your focus off of it.
It's a spiritual experience. It expands the view, your perception of reality.
Exactly. I mean, you can literally go to my Twitter right now, and I promise this isn't a joke. I dreamt of that craft last night. The typical TR-3B Astra, right? That we hear about it in, from, if it was from anywhere, probably Skunkworks, if it's, to be believed. But I saw that craft in my dream last night. That's how typical, not typical, but I mean, that's how many people have seen that style craft. It's pretty well known now.
I'd say it this way: from what I am told about the TR-3B, this was like something from Star Wars, baby. This was huge.
Okay, so this
it took 5 minutes to go over me, So, or what felt like 5 minutes. It was cute. Right. And like I said, it was not zooming away. It was just blowing by like a blimp.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So the deal was, I went in the house and I sketched it all in my personal journal. Wrote down time, all this, everything I could remember while it was fresh.
Okay.
I didn't have the guts to contact this New York State MUFON and tell them.
Why not?
I wasn't there yet.
Okay.
I wasn't there yet. Okay.
Even when you're writing, well, you know that, a year, you don't know, but a year later, you'll be writing articles about UFOs. Clearly, there was some interest.
I had not read that article in later 2012 that said, they've been declining since the early 80s,
You're like, didn't I see one like 3 months ago?
So if we're looking at the adventure, if we're looking at the Circle of the Hero, me reading that article in CNN.com was the instigating event.
Gotcha.
Okay. And I just said, okay. And 8-9 months later, I'm pitching a column for a newspaper with mainstream press.
Right.
Okay. And like I said, they were laughing me out of their offices and things. Okay. Well, okay. So I'm getting to write the column. Boss is happy. Okay.
Yep.
People these days, they say, well, God, Cheryl, writing a newspaper column, that must be fun. I said, it's a 500 to 1,000 word term paper every Thursday. Think about that. You got to have something to write about.
Exactly.
Okay. And fortunately, my wife, Linda, she was a pretty good muse, because sometimes I'd be stuck on Wednesday and I don't have a story. And she would say, well, you haven't looked at thus and such. You haven't talked about thus and such. Hey, have you ever thought about thus and such, And usually that got my head going and I'd go write it. Okay. Or research it and write it.
Right.
All right. Well, one of the things I started doing in New York State was I started looking up the cities in New York State, and I MUFON had county information and like that, so I can narrow it down to a county or something like this, along with the cities for picking out things, recent sightings in a particular place in New York. New York State was my beat. Remember that, okay?
Right.
So, but New Fork didn't have that. They didn't collect county data. In fact, I wrote them and said, hey, do you guys have is it in your database? Is this something you could display? And they said, no. If you want to know where the county is, stick a pin in the map. I'm going, oh my God. So, so that was one thing. And then it got to a point where I was reporting these statistics and I was doing New York State. And I over a period of time, I did clusters of counties or individual counties in New York State. And all of a sudden, this is by 2015. I've been writing the column, 2 or 3 years at this point. And my wife, Linda, and I were sitting in our favorite pub, and we were sitting there with a couple of pints, and we were sitting there talking. We said, look at all the cool stuff we found, because we were taking all this stuff that I was correlating and showing it to retired MUFON investigators, retired state directors, and they're going, we didn't know there was a cluster there. We didn't know there was a cluster there either. Oh my God, how'd you find that? So I realized we both realized we're onto something different, new. So we started talking about this at length over our pub, waiting for our burgers. And she said, what if we did the whole country? And I looked at her and I said, my God, it would take us a year. And then in the end, it took us 18 months to do that first book, our UFO sightings desk reference 2001 to 2015. Okay. Took us 18 months worth of weekends because we were both still working.
Right.
Okay. And we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
Both databases, neither one of them was compatible. So we had to make changes, adjustments, sanitize data that wouldn't sort properly. Remember, I'm an IT person.
Yeah.
Okay. So even I had trouble making this stuff work, but we had something going for us that most people do not. Linda and I were former government contractors.
Right. Contact.
No, we knew that as a government contractor, you learn to do as little work as possible.
Okay.
Now that sounds silly. That sounds like we want to be lazy. No, you find out how to do something, make lots of notes, and write a process procedure. So as we learned how to sanitize MUFON data suitable for our database, and after we learned how to sanitize New Fork data suitable for our database, and then combine them, and then we figured out, we need to add county information to this to make some sense of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. As we did all this stuff, we kept very extensive notes and wrote process procedure. Do this, do this, do this, do this in this order. And that's how we got good at it. All right. So by 2020, we're getting ready to do the first thing. Now, let me go back to the first book. It had about 121,000 sightings, not the actual reports of the sighting, but the statistics. Okay. We sent a copy down to Ralph Blumenthal at the New York Times. Him and I had been talking online, and he liked it. And he had me send him a second copy. He took his copy into the editors in the New York Times and said, I know why we don't report UFOs. Well, I know it's all hearsay and it's all anecdotal information. Somebody did the bloody science here, and so they put him on a train. He came up and spent 2 days with us and sat in our library drinking tea and eating scones with me. And then when Linda came home, did the same thing with her. And then we went down to one of the Irish pubs and got trashed, and it was a nice evening. And all we talked about for 5 hours was UFOs. Okay. And so 2017, what most people don't understand, was a disclosure year. There was the Obama era disclosure that happened in the February timeframe, where the National Archives released a whole bunch of formerly
it was.
classified CIA stuff.
Yeah, that was. I believe that was the biggest data dump that the government has, pretty much ever done.
Yeah.
Of that caliber, and then obviously, the next thing you're about to bring up really. The damn Earth.
No. You got to understand something. New York Times downloaded all those PDFs like we did. And me and Ralph were talking about this and said, CIA said for years, oh, we're not looking at UFOs. That's silly, And here was a particular article in 1950 of these two OSI scientists, Dr. X and Dr. B, sitting there arguing over the fact that how come there's a peak in the summertime of UFO sightings? Is it summer madness? Is it asteroids? Is it meteors? What is it? And then I wrote an article with that, and I because we had the data at that point, and we plotted out. They had 129 data points. I had 5,500. Boom! There's your chart, baby. And so this is what we had, and then the next they did a Science magazine article, very respectful. If your listeners want to see it, go on Google, NYT for New York Times, space UFO, space Costa. You will get an April 24, 2017 article. You might hit a paywall, you might not. I don't know. Okay, and that was it. They did a very respectful article. Goofy thing, it hit the paper press aspect the next day on April 25th. My phone started ringing at 8:30 in the morning and didn't stop until about 10:30 that night. I called the editors the next morning and said their phones were ringing off the hook. News directors and editors all over the planet were calling them.
Wow.
We had a hit on our hands. And suddenly also our readership on New York Skies went through the roof. Okay. So by Christmas time, they take me aside and said, Cheryl, you're pulling an international audience on a dinky little weekly paper, And so we just kept going. So we waited. We did a lot, we did this, the UFO shows, all this kind of stuff. 2019, I was booked so solid. I was someplace every 2 weeks for the entire year.
Right. I'm actually really close with Kevin Day of the Nimitz event, and I am going to Congress with him. Like, I'm accompanying him to go speak to Congress.
How's he getting to speak to Congress? I sent them several letters with copies of our books and the key people, the Senate Select and the House Select committees. I gave them printouts down to the zip code of their states and said, we would love to testify. We've got the data, guys.
Right. And that's part
crickets.
Well, that's part of our plan, right? That's him and I, we've been talking about this. He's actually the reason that I'm doing this show, because I started talking to him day and night, phone calls, text messages, Facebook messages, because I would just ask him as many questions, because I started seeing him all over the news and all over the every UFO documentary and show was featuring him, and I reached out, and he took an interest in my questions, and all the last time I talked to him, he ended it with saying, I'd enjoy it if you came with us, and I was like, I will.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, he was granted an audience after, many attempts at this. As Commander Fravor just went in front of, it's not Congress as a whole. It's
no. I know it's this thing, but a couple of months ago, a week before the hearings, I sent Congressman Andre Carson the same kind of package I sent Rubio and some folks on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. I gave them a copy of our pink book, the 2020 book, okay, and I gave them a printout of Indiana down to the zip code. Jeez. And said, when you guys have your hearings, please feel free to invite us down to show you the scale of how big this is.
And that's where we're headed, though, Cheryl. I think I don't lose hope yet, because I think the more pilots, the more radar people, the more FAA people that come forward and say there is something to this, put your religious shit aside and let's deal with what's in front of us, the data. Maybe, you know, then they'll start taking you more seriously. And
But you know something, there's something bigger. Someone took me aside the other day and said, Cheryl, you're being sat on. I said, by the government? He says, no, you're being sat on a big way. I said, why? I said, how many production companies have reached out to you since your first book? I said, almost 24. Why? He said, and they just decide they're going in a different direction, don't they? He said, yeah. And they keep going out and doing documentaries about the same low-hanging fruit. The same stuff everybody else has done a story on. Kecksburg, Stephenson, the Hudson Valley, you know, Roswell. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Minot Air Force Base.
Exactly.
Yep.
And these producers have it in their head that the numbers are going to be boring. Even a producer I was working with directly wouldn't even audition me and Linda. At one point, this one guy wanted us to feed the information so he could have some 20-something sweet young lovely parrot our material. And I told him which direction to go to hell and how sideways.
But then,
you know?
but then they have Linda.
We're two old gay ladies here, and one of them's a tranny, and for some reason they seem to have this problem with that, and so. But the bottom line is this: I told people in 2019 that we were dealing with our lobbyists in Washington. They called me up. This is before we knew about COVID, and they said, if Rubio gets his bill attached to a continued a government funding thing, like a military funding bill or something like this, they're going to have hearings. They're coming. You're the only women who have ever done the statistics. Not even Blue Book did what you girls have done. No. Would you be willing to testify before Congress? And Linda and I had to both sit there and look at this guy and say, we're former government contractors. You work your whole career not to have to testify before Congress, you know. So we said, sure, no problem. Then Linda and I were talking about this, and this is the cute part of the story. We were sitting here talking about this, and we said, okay, so imagine this. It's C-SPAN. They're feeding, they're streaming the government hearings on UFOs to everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay. And these congressmen and senators up there asking questions, thumbing through things. We want everybody to know that they're thumbing through our book.
Right.
So we decided to make it bright pink. You know, so bright you can flag an aircraft with this thing. And we dedicated it to another woman, Coral Lorenz, who founded APRO, which was the mother organization that founded MUFON. Okay. And so we did that. But before that book came out, in 2020, no place to go, all the time in the world to do it because of the COVID. So I start doing the data cleanup we need to do with, I had the 2019 data to clean up, getting ready. Mm-hmm. I'm getting ready. People want us to go down to like the municipal level, that type of thing. So we said, okay, fine. Well, we found out something funny in the data. 3.5% didn't fill in what city they were in. That works out to a lot. Trust me, out of what ended up being 167,632 records.
Yeah, 3% is a lot.
3% was a lot. Then we discovered another 7.5 to 8% filled in the city, but they said like East Jasper next to Joe's gas station.
So that can't be.
You can't sort on a thing like this.
You can't sort that, right? Because yeah,
and you can't filter that out. Or they put an extra space in between the first letter of the thing, or they use capital letters and lowercase letters, or they went into some kind of narrative instead of just putting in the name of the city, and that was 7.5%, and that worked out to that was something like 7.5%. It was huge. 167.32 times 0.07. That was over 12,000 records. Okay.
And when you're talking about UFOs, that's a lot.
Yes, it is. So what we sat down and talked about this. Linda's got the real science degrees. I got the arts and entertainment degree, the top hat and the cane. So I'm the one that goes out and talks in front of the audiences usually. And she is the real science brains behind this thing and really held me to a very rigid science standard all the time we were working on this. So what we did was I sat down with a golden list. I brought the database down into like an Excel sheet. I lined up all the fields, colored the golden mail list, and I mixed it in so that we could
Right.
by state and by city. And we would either correct the spelling of the cities, and we would verify or add the county information. Plus, we added longitude, zip code, that kind of thing. Okay. And that was an 850-hour effort. We started in the first week of August. It went to the first week of January of 2021. At that point in January, I was able to get a dump from both databases for the 2020 information, which I knew was going to be substantial. I got a process procedure, had it cleaned up in about a week. And the stuff that took us couple of months to do back in the day, I was able to do in about a week. And I put the entire book, instead of 2,000 hours like it was for me and Linda back in 2016 for the first book, I put the entire book together in 850 hours.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
But you'll learn as you go. And if you keep good notes, you get very streamlined.
That's your circle, right? That's the process you were talking about doing.
That's the journey of the hero, baby. And those ugly things, those adventures and those ugly dragons that come up and get you, 3.5% dragon and the 7% dragon, so we got it all put together and that's where we are now. Here was the problem. Everybody wanted us to get on to the municipal level because we were doing the entire country and we focused on the dynamics of the shapes, the how many of them in a year, how many a month, how many a week, what hours of the day they were seen. And we did it for all 29 available shapes. Okay. Problem is we did a calculation. We actually let the software tell us how big a book would be if we printed down to the municipal level, and it would be 6,500 pages. That's 3 Oxford dictionaries. It's 1.5 feet thick. You can't print it. You can't bind over 1,000 pages, and you can't sell a book like that.
It would have to be 4, 5, 6 different parts. And you can't tell that, right?
Well, here's what we're doing, and we've got all 50 of them ready. We're making some final tweaks.
Oh,
we're doing 50 individual state
state
books.
by state. That's even better because then someone can buy their individual.
And they're titled something catchy. It's called like the first one's Ohio, since we live in Ohio now. All right. The first one's called UFOs in Ohio and where to find them. Kind of plugging in the beasts and where to find them kind of hook, And the second one's for Michigan. And then what's actually regulating which ones come out next, when you get the whole PDF built for the entire text of the entire book, it represents a certain number of pages.
Okay.
And that's what regulates how big the cover size, the cover template is.
Okay.
I've got 10 states that use one template. I've got other states that use, there's 5 states over here that use a different template. And then there's at least a dozen states that use only one template for them only because of their size. Okay. You have a tolerance of plus or minus 10 pages. Actually, plus or minus 5. It's 10-page tolerance.
Right.
So what we had to do was literally build every book. So they're in the database. They're in PDFs right now in pieces, and all we have to do is merge all those PDFs into one with the right front matter material for that state and the right back matter material, which is basically, we took all of our best writing and essays about UFO research, all the things we discovered, and put them in this one big essay in several sections. Okay, one big essay. Right. And then we took for this book, we printed each state's data down to from county, zip code, municipal, and the display shapes across 20 years. And for some places, it's only 50, 60 pages. For some states like California, just that table alone is 520 pages,
Right, right.
Yeah, you get my drift. So we're getting ready to release very shortly. We've had a lot of false starts, a lot of demons come up on this one. We've been trying now for 3 years to do this. We've got the bugs worked out. We are going to self-publish through Amazon, as we usually do, all 50 individual state books. And then we're going to follow it with 29 individual books on each individual shape.
Wow.
It will, that along with our analysis and the analysis books that go along with it. And one more book, I've identified all 728 hotspots for the 20 years. Okay, so we'll have about 70 to 80 books. It will be the largest collected, analyzed, and published books of UFOlogy in a statistical form ever published in human history. And then Linda and I are going to toddle off into the sunset.
Well, with that being said, I think...
No, we'll go to conferences because those are like little mini vacations and we're retired. We can't afford to do it. So why not, but we probably won't publish anything thereafter.
Well, and you know what strikes me is someone like yourself, military, then military contractor, something happens, we hear this story far too often where someone has an experience like this, like you had, sees a craft, and then dedicates the rest of their life to finding answers. I don't know about any other phenomenon like that, where someone will literally uproot their life to search for something, search for the answers. I myself have had this happen as of the last year or two, where I almost feel obsessive, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it seems like you stumbled into something, and you could potentially be putting together a roadmap that is used a lot in the future for, how to gather data, how to publish that data, how to clean it up, all those things. And then just, a glossary of where the hotspots are. If you were to say, where's the biggest hotspot? Is that like a spoiler? Like, where's the mecca of hotspots in the United States?
Okay, that's the tricky thing. Because people, first thing, there's this myth that there's this one hotspot where you can almost set your clock by it. It's like a bus schedule. They come every day. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
I have proven this.
Right.
It doesn't exist. All right. But people say to me, what's the hotspot? You mean by state? That'd be California, Florida, Texas, in that order. Okay.
I was going to say California's got to be the state.
Well, no, wait a minute now. That's if you want it from a state standpoint. Now, do you want to do it by a county standpoint? There's like 3,135 counties and county-like entities, okay? Number one county in the country is Los Angeles County, not the city, Los Angeles County. It's a much bigger area. Everybody calls me, well, Cheryl, they got all the light pollution. Not in the county, they don't. Okay, point one. The second one is Maricopa County, Arizona, the Phoenix area. Okay, now, if you were to, there's your top two counties in the country. Are they the hot spots? Okay, then somebody said, well, now I've got the one thing nobody else has. I got it down to the zip code.
Right.
Neither one of the national collection agencies have it down to the zip code. Okay, I've got it down to the zip code. And the top zip code in the country is 85001. 85001. And that is downtown Phoenix.
Which all of us know.
Well, wait a minute. Before you put a cherry on top, okay? That works out to 1,374 sightings over 20 years. Okay. That works. Now, wait a minute. Now, 1,374 sightings. Well, that is a lot. Divided by 20, that is only about 68 a year. That works out to 5 or 6 a month. So it's several television producers who have come to me, and these were notable documentary companies. And so, Cheryl, we want to go to that spot where we can set up on our camera and like every night capture one or something like that. No, you would be on top of some hotel for a month, burning up somebody's credit card or corporate account for those 5 or 6 a month.
Right.
Okay. And that's the deal. Now, what I discovered, and there are several other cities, but would you believe the next closest 3 or 4 or 5 cities are half or a third less than downtown Phoenix? That number from 1,374 falls down to about 700 or 800. It's 700 or 800, and then it falls into like 400 or 500. Okay, it falls off quick. Okay, so let's go a step further. I went looking. Okay, in the calendar days, one state years, including leap years, is 7,303 days for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Or at least for this 20-year period we're measuring, 2001 to 2020. All 50 states, that's 146,060 days. I've identified 728 plus or minus 5 that have 4 or more per day for one of these one-day hotspots. I'll give you an example. April 16th, 2008. The daily average in the United States. Okay, let me give you the averages here real quick. 167,632. Okay, about 8,400 per year, about 700 per month, about 160 a week, and about 23 a day.
Per day, yeah.
Okay, in the national level.
Right.
Now there are spikes. Okay.
Of course.
Now,
Yep.
April 16th, 2008, there was a spike nationally of 60. That's a lot.
That's a large number.
That's a lot. So I did a breakout. I remember I got all this automation I built. I pulled a breakout report. Okay. All the states listed up. It was just more states than the usual suspects, like California, Florida, Texas, and Ohio, and New York. You know, they're in the top 10. But everybody was onesie twosies, except Indiana. Indiana, a state that averages 2 sightings a week, had 25 in one day.
So that, that's got to put your eyes right there for that, what's going on there, right?
Yeah. And then it broke down to two primary counties. When you break it down, it came down to 2 counties and about 12 municipalities. But if you really refine the data and pull it by zip codes, there were a couple of patches of it, but that period of time has been referred to as the Kokomo Lights.
Okay.
But I found here's the deal. You look at, take the zip code, look at it for 20 years. But what you do is you got 20 years going across the top of the spreadsheet. Okay. You've got one zip code. And then what you've done is you go, you display out the days, January 1, January 2, January 8, 365 days down the right, the left-hand side.
Right.
Okay. All right. If they had a sighting that day. All right. That most of those squares in that grid are empty.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them if they have sightings, they have onesie twosies, sometimes a threesie. But onesie twosies. That's it. Almost nothing. Most places have almost nothing most of the time. And then if you have 4 or higher, that's statistically significant.
Right.
So I brought the data down into a spreadsheet form, looked up like one particular state and said, okay, here's all the zip code, here's the counties and zip codes and the zip codes within those counties, and said, show me everything that's 4 or more. And it did. And there were a lot of them, and it totaled up. California had the most because they've had 21,717, something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. sightings for the 20 years. Okay. And then Florida is like 11,000. Texas is like 9 or 10,000, something like that. So the thing is, California had 228 of these one-day events. They had a couple of one-day events that were like, they had a whole bunch of them. There were like 4, 5, 6, 7, that type of thing. They had one with 200, okay. What was going on that day?
Right. And
was it a missile? Was it a missile launch, or was it something really weird going on?
Yeah. And again, to preface all of this, now these are sightings, 4 in one day. That could have been 4 people identifying the same craft, right? Or it could be 4 terrestrial things that people just didn't understand what they were seeing. Now, these aren't, it's these numbers.
It was unidentified to the observers.
Exactly. So remember that this is all what Cheryl and Linda have done is gathered the data all in one place.
We don't vet them. We don't vet them. People when we were getting ready to put the pink book out, and I would bring certain chapters over and run a copy at my local Staples.
Yep.
Okay. And the manager knew me and knew what I was doing. And he said, "You did take out of the kooks, nuts, and crackpots, right?" And I said, "Frank, no. I can't do that. I can't go back and vet, 167,000 over 20 years, right? I can't do that. But statistically, we can. Okay. Give me an example. The statistics way to do this is let's throw some percentage away. Okay.
How do you determine that, though?
That's the beauty. Remember, everybody for 70 years has been trying to prove, is this one the real thing? Is this one the real thing?
They want
is that one the real thing? That's what they're looking for. Okay, instead of looking at an individual autopsy, we were looking at a disease model. We were looking at the anthill versus the individual ant.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we can. Okay. Dr. Valet will. Jacques Valet will tell you that 80% is noise. MUFON investigators will tell you about 70% of the sighting reports are noise.
And then the government will tell you 5% is real.
Well, I got a good number there too. Okay, but then Linda and Cheryl, using our own criteria, came up with 68%. But let's go ahead and just say 70% is noise. Okay. If we do if we take 30%, which is what we think, we've thrown 70% away, of 167,632 over 20 years, that's 50,290. That's an average of about 2,500 a year. And when you take that bigger number, 50,000, and divide it by 240 months, it's 200. Now, if these are the real starships,
right?
That's 210 starships a month for the 240 months of the 20 years here in the United States. Now, the skeptics say, Cheryl, the newspaper editors and news directors, these are the super skeptics. Oh, Cheryl, they got to be very, very rare, Cheryl. I said, okay, why don't I throw 99% away?
Right.
Okay, 99%. 99% works out to about 1,676 for 20 years, about 84 per year. And if we assume that these are the real starships, that is 7 starships a month for the 240 months of the 20 years here in the United States. 7 starships a month for 240 months.
And let's put that into perspective, because I don't think people truly understand these things. If, I know Cheryl knows they exist. The government has now all but said they are real.
We are in contact with a spacefaring race, or maybe multiple spacefaring races.
Exactly.
Think of it in that way.
And these things, if 99% of her data, or their data, is incorrect, or just noise, then how many did you say per month?
7 per month. It only takes 1 in my book. That's a biblical experience.
That's 7 craft that fly with impunity through our atmosphere, down to our sea levels, through our backyards. And there is not a damn thing we can do.
And you know something? The people who ask me to generate a number like that, I tell them you need a nightlight.
Yeah.
You need a nightlight to
Yeah.
sleep by. But let me throw a real wrench in it for you here. Okay. All right, audience, listen to this very carefully. I just told you what that number could be if we went down to this 1%. I want you to go back and get into your web searches here, and I want you to go back and look at that December 16th article in the New York Times in 2017. Okay, they have the original. Don't go any place else and look for this video of the little gimbal picture, right? Okay, don't go any place else for it. Look at the New York Times one. Click on it and clearly sit there. Don't worry about the image. Sit there and listen to the pilots talking.
There you go.
And at one point, the one pilot goes, "Hey," he locked on to him. He says, "Hey, got him. Look at that." And he says, "Wow, look at that. Da, 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 da. Hey, look up there. There's a whole fleet of them." And all of the news networks in this country edit that piece off.
What?
They don't ask a question about it. That tells me they are complicit in the conspiracy.
Right. I couldn't agree more, because what the pilot is saying there is they're locked on to the main craft. However, there is a fleet behind them that we are not able to see on the FLIR camera. That is, to me, the bigger story, that these things travel not alone all the time, but in packs. I mean, he tells the other guy, and you can, if you just listen to the audio on that tape, those aren't people who are, that might be a drone. No, they have no fucking clue how that thing's doing what it's doing.
Okay, can I throw you one better? It goes along with this. I wrote an article. Can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it's in my archive of 230 articles. It was in February of 1947. That's the Roswell year. Remember this?
Yeah, 47.
Okay, this was February, not July. There were these two students up at Syracuse University. And February in Syracuse is pretty miserable, trust me. And so they were going across campus, and they were going by the Holden Observatory. This is a little 19th century building with a tower and a little observatory dome. Okay, very, very quaint little building. And they could see somebody up there, and the telescope was like doing this routine. Okay, and they went inside. And because the stuff has to be of a stable temperature, the building's not heated for that. Okay, because the stuff can't be contracting and all this stuff. And the guys noticed this professor guy looking through this stuff, and he's like moving this thing around wildly, you know. And they said, and he notices them. He said, "Oh my God, thank God you're here. Everybody's going to think I'm nuts. Come here and take a look at this." He doesn't tell them what they're looking at. Each of the guys look through the thing. And they were looking up in the high atmosphere, suborbital area, and they said there was a whole fleet of these things, and they looked like they were round on the front. And this is kind of like who was the guy that was reported the first UFOs out there?
Kenneth Arnold.
Ken Arnold. His UFO was that one that was kind of rounded on the front and kind of semi concave in the back, right?
It kind of looked like a bite was taken out of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way of saying it. They said there was hundreds of them up there. Now, understand, 1947, we lit off 3 nukes 2 years before.
That's where I want to go with you on this.
All right. Okay. Basically, if people have been defending us, look back at April 14th, 1561. People in Nuremberg, Germany, come out of their huts, and there's a Star Wars battle going on over the city, right? It happens again 5 years later in Basel, Switzerland, 2 different weekends, right? Or 2 different weeks. And it went on for like a week each time, right? Okay, somebody's been protecting us. Call it the Galactic Federation if you like. Somebody is protecting us. Okay, so now we're fighting our own little terrestrial war down here all through World War II. They got probes down here following us around. We call them Foo Fighters. They're taking pictures of us and everything. I'd like to think it's the spacefaring races and not the History Channel in the future sending probes back to monitor World War II footage.
That was the.
You like that, huh?
That was the. I could see the Giorgio. What's his name? George from Ancient
Giorgio.
Aliens.
Yeah. Tukalos.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so here's the deal. This is months before. Now we set off 3 nukes. That puts out a lot of radio energy, there was radioactivity, everything electromagnetic. Okay, DC to light. Okay, and it went in all directions and made a really loud bang. And oh, by the way, it went through multiple layers of subspace. So while we might have just blown a hole in the desert with the first one, we did some other serious damage someplace else.
Yeah.
And then we did the 2 cities in Japan, and we did some other damage someplace else. Okay. And suddenly the Galactic Federation realizes the natives have a box of matches.
The monkeys all of a sudden have nuclear weapons. We should probably keep an eye on them.
Yes.
And
and what do we have in 1952? They're buzzing Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks.
For 2 weekends in a row, jets are scrambled.
And everybody said, oh, by the way, when you hear the story,
right.
This says, oh, they were scrambled from Andrews. No, and Andrews's runways were torn up. They were repaving. They were pouring new concrete. They had to fly them in from Dover, Delaware. Okay, it was only for a jet. That's only a couple of extra minutes, but they did. Andrews was out of commission. And like I said, these things would allow them to follow them and pace them, and they would just pull away like the jet was sitting still.
It's almost like I want you to see me, but just know that I'm superior.
And what are they doing now? They're allowing our pilots to see them. Now, people say why. People ask me why. They came to me, hey, you're a reporter. Why? What have you seen? What have you learned all this?
If we knew that, then.
Oh, I know this. We're at that ecological tipping point. Okay. And if you interview Ray Hernandez from the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation.
Okay. Dr. Ray Hernandez.
Yeah. Ray Hernandez. Okay. And I might have his email. I can send it to you off air.
Yeah.
Okay. They did 4,400 experiencers electronically with emails and things, and interviewed them with layers and layers of test questions. Okay. And one of the things that kept coming back is it wasn't, for the most part, wasn't the negative experience for most of them. And they kept coming back saying, hey, those folks are pretty great. And they told us to take care of our planet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think most people generally, I'm pretty sure I've heard that study, or at least someone said it in a documentary somewhere, was people voted more often to keep the experiences coming, and that it was generally a positive thing. Now, I was going to ask, I don't know of many cases aside from maybe Jim Peniston, in the Rendlesham Forest, where someone was actually harmed, albeit inadvertent. Most often, there's no harm to a human done with these sightings. There are a few cases where something happens, but just like if you walked in the back of a jet that was taken off, you might get hurt, right? So these things are going to happen. I don't think we need to label it, no offense to Lou Elizondo, no offense to Chris Mellon, but the way they immediately label it a threat bothers me. I have tremendous.
Okay, wait a minute. You got to understand military thinking.
I understand it.
No. I gathered electronic intelligence. That's the most I can tell you I did. And then they figured out, hey, Costa has a darkroom at home. They sent me to Periscope Photography School. Then I also gathered photo intelligence on the Periscope. Okay. Again, I can't tell you any more than that.
That's okay.
Okay. Now, but one of the missions of gathering intelligence, you gather it on everybody.
Right.
Your friends and foe alike, because your friend today may be your foe tomorrow, and your foe today may be your friend tomorrow. Okay. But don't trust anybody.
Right.
So if coming from Lou Elizondo's counterterrorism viewpoint, everybody is a threat until proven otherwise.
And he has definitely specified what he means by that, because it's not just me. And again, I have so much respect for Lou, and you know, in the 4 years since he's become a public figure, the community has advanced so far, and it's not because of Dr. Grifter Greer, you know, who's been at it for 30 years, you know, charges you $1,400 to go sign an autograph. It's not because of him or you know, what is there? You know, anyone who's been featured on Ancient Aliens. Those are the people who are, you know, do the convention circuit, and they make a killing off of us. Lou is.
They do. The rest of us that do the convention circuit don't make a killing.
Right. Right.
Okay.
But
if we get invited at all, hey, I just do charge graphs. People, there's an attitude out there in the UFO community. Oh, she just does charge graphs and numbers. Oh, we don't need to have her come. Yeah,
that's absolutely that's preposterous.
We've done as Linda and I have done the fucking science, for God's sakes here. You know, which we've reached out to. We figured, hey, things are loosening up. Press is talking about this more. Congress just said this thing. We reached out to 8 colleges and universities here in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. Okay. 8 prominent schools, a couple of them you'd recognize in our heartbeat. And we sent them a nice business letter and said, here's a little 2-page summary of our data that should blow your socks off. We didn't say that, and we said it was the summary of the U.S. numbers. And well, let me give your audience real quick that summary. Okay, the real summary is there are 3,135 counties approximately, and only 105 counties did not report UFOs for the 20-year period. 3,135. So that leaves us 3,030, something like that, reported UFOs. Okay, and if you go back onto, if you look me up on Twitter, and you can put that up for your audience. I've got United States maps up there to show it mostly green, except for these holes where the 105 counties are. Okay. In the United States, there are 35,879 municipalities, 20,348 reported UFOs. In the United States, there are 41,692 zip codes. 44% of them, essentially 18,605 zip codes, reported UFOs. And I've got them mapped right down to the zip code. Okay? And that's the deal. That's how big this is. Can I get them to invite me to come down and talk at their colleges? Let their faculties, let their students hear what the scale of this thing is, especially since Congress has said these things are not from our world? Mm-hmm. No, crickets. Now, on the other hand, the Cuyahoga County Library System, I sent them the pink book along with the little summary. They said, well, we don't know if anybody be interested in it. And they sent it out to all their branches here in the county. And 7 branches signed up immediately and said, yeah, we want them. So December, February, here in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, essentially the Cleveland region, we're going to be presenting our findings. And for those of you in Michigan, Lake Houghton, Michigan, there's a conference in 2 weeks, and we're presenting there too.
I want to go to more of the conferences and the conventions that are. I definitely, because I've been doing it for movies, and I've done panels for movies and stuff. So, I really want to, kind of not embed myself into the community, but definitely journey a little bit more further into it. Now, with your experience.
One last point. I'm a tranny, okay? Your audience knows I'm a transsexual person. It's old news. Did it 32 years ago. Okay, no big deal. And yes, I hurt. Okay. The thing you need to keep in mind about this, there's some people in the UFO community didn't like the 2 gay ladies. Oh my God, one of them is a tranny. Oh my God.
And they figured out something I didn't.
Yeah, that too. But one of the points that came up with it during 2019, I added 4 additional slides to my presentation in the beginning of it because of something like this. And I showed pictures of who I used to be. Air Force picture, my Navy picture, and my glamour shot, that kind of thing. Okay. And I said, here's the deal. And oh yeah, here's a picture of me and Linda jumping over the broom. We are a married couple, and she's not my sister, And then we basically said, here's the point. If you can't deal with us, you'll never deal with ET.
Wow.
I got a 600-person standing ovation. I was expecting to get stoned at that conference. And I did that at every conference every 2 weeks, all through 2019.
There's no better way. I've been saying this for some time now. Anyone looking in at us, any other species that's looking in at us, they're not going to see black, white, gay, straight. It's just not how it works.
No, we're the monkey kids.
Yeah, we're one idiotic race of, belligerent monkeys. We need, we need to really self-evaluate and find. I think if a craft did land on the White House lawn, it might be the best thing to ever happen to us, because maybe for once we could see how small we are, what a blip we are to existence. Okay, here's the problem. Orson Welles scared the snot out of the United States with his radio broadcast in 1938. Now keep this in mind. War of the Worlds one, right? War of the Worlds broadcast, and people who tuned into the show late thought Grover's Mill, New Jersey was invaded by Martians, okay? Now, taken out of context with that, okay? So here we are 10 years later, about 8 years later in 1947, they cracked a couple of off-world craft cracked up out there in the desert of New Mexico. It's not just one, it was two. And so the deal is, these guys, and this said, hey, wow, they put out the press release, hey, we got one, and then they got shut down, right? Well, the people shutting them down had this mindset, jeepers creepers, Orson Welles scared the hell out of everybody. And it was a radio show. We can't just let this run wild like this. We got to educate people. And the Robinson panel in 1952 said, we've got to educate people. And that sort of started with things like Star Trek in 1968 and all of this kind of stuff. Now, here we are 70 years, almost 80 years from that. Okay. We've been somewhat educated. Mm-hmm. And the thinking is that the last poll I said saw 16.74% of adult Americans in the United States say they've seen a UFO. Yes. Now, that doesn't even translate to how many people report, because I've already got 167,000, right? Basically, it's 1 in about 257 people reports what they see based on what we actually get for reports and the people who answered that poll. Yeah, I mean, the thing 1 in 257. Yeah, the thing I saw, I never reported it. I've seen 40 of them. I never reported. Right. So, but the bottom line is this: with all this press that's been coming out, all the stuff about the Tic Tacs, now we got congressional hearings. The Congress said they're real, but we can't show you everything because they're afraid to reveal the technology used to capture the pictures they got. Yeah. And I don't blame them. Yeah. Okay. Why show our hand? Okay? Yeah. No, that is national security. That is national security. But what they could do, if these things are not from our world, and you can take the president and key people, leadership from Congress. Hey, by the way, leadership from Congress. I wrote my congressman when I was still in New York, our senator, actually, Senator Schumer, almost a couple of times a year for the 7 years. I did one article that I when I had my data, I printed out all of the UFOs in New York State by congressional district. You know how much hate mail our editors got? I loved it. So when I got the other database mixed into the data, the art department got involved. We did it as a map, Okay. And like I said, and the hate mail just kept coming in from state offices and things. It was great. Editors love that stuff. And, okay, so here's the deal. In 7 years, I never got a single response to my email. These congressional hearings started.
I got a nice letter from Senator Schumer.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Telling me thank you for the support because I was advocating hearings. Thank you for your support towards having government hearings on the UAP topic matter. It was a long letter. It was very nicely done. I was stunned.
Done.
They were probably trying to give him that elder heart attack, because they damn near did. I'm like, what? But the bottom
Just
line
an
is, now,
acknowledgement.
if they really want, just the acknowledgement was enough for me. But by golly, if they want to do it right, stop bringing in all the Pentagon spooks. Stop bringing in all the swaggering pilots. And would you bring in some people like the citizen hearings, some people who've been studying this stuff a while? Let the civilians come in and tell you what we know about it.
I agree. I definitely agree. And I mean,
I can't get producers in Hollywood to work with me, to let me. I wanted to take one. I took two different producers. I told them, look, I know where the hot spots were. At that time, I knew roughly there was at least 100 of them in the database. I said, why don't we go on a road show? We'll go there with an advance man. We'll rent the local VFW, or if it's a little country town, we'll rent the local American Legion or the Grange Hall or something. Give a presentation like I gave at the conferences. It's a camera. Cameras will be there. It's a casting call. People will open up and tell us their stories, guys. This will be reality.
Yeah.
This is a reality show. That you
of
can't.
Epic proportion.
Yes, they turned me down. All of them. All 5 of them turned me down and said, oh, we can't do that.
You ever thought about like crowdfunding it or trying to?
I produced 70 episodes of a program about witchcraft in 1991. Within a week of the first story done about us, and we had over 100 done about us, me and the host were being followed around by 4 different constabularies because witches are evil and they're probably sacrificing babies in their cellar.
Yeah.
And that's what we were up against. The UFO community has similar problems there. I thought about doing it, but at this point in the game, I was 39 then. I'm 70 now, hon.
Right,
So if they
Yeah.
wanted to do a show like this and they want to fly me to all these places with the investigators and all this kind of stuff, hey, I'll be happy to go do it. Happy to go present my numbers. Happy to schmooze the crowd with numbers and say, tell us your stories and that kind of thing. I'm happy to do that. But do I want to be the executive producer of the whole ship, the whole circus? No.
Well, maybe we can talk some more because I mean,
people.
yeah, I'm interested in hearing the complete data set, and I know a lot of people that would be also interested. With a correlation that I've always seen, and I'm glad that other people see it too, and it is a prevailing theory, but the advent of nuclear weapons being a threshold that once reached, then
we know it's a sensitive topic whenever they shut down our missiles in Montana a couple of times. I mean, it's a sensitive issue. So we heard a story that Eisenhower had a meeting with them at Holloman Air Force Base, and they said, "Give up your nuclear weapons. We'll give you technology." No, he's a general,
Yep.
So
he had the military mindset.
Yeah, he had to protect the country, and I understand that. And he also told them, "Don't scare my people."
Right.
So
and is that, I would say, now this is generally what I think. Is there a civilization that maybe we just can't perceive, that's been here for a lot longer than we have? That could be true. Yes. However, what
do you mean?
There are people that say that maybe that these UFOs or something they've been here for a lot longer than humans have, and we just don't have the ability to perceive or understand that they're always here. They're always around. We just don't always know.
Let's go there.
I don't like that one.
I can go there. Okay. If you remember, I run in mystical circles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
I get
right?
I get to meet. Well, no, I run in mystical circles. I get to meet a lot of very exotic people. Okay, and I can't go into it deeper than this because of confidentiality issues.
Of course.
But they, and as one person put it to me, we have always been with you. You just don't see us among you.
So could there be more to that story then?
Okay, think of it this way.
I don't know.
People see a UFO. People see a UFO. And for the people, once they get past the whole processing thing of saying, I can't explain it, it's like a spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And as my Lama says, there's tons of paranormal stuff going on around people on a day-to-day basis that they do not see, they are not aware of. And he looks at me and says, I know you're aware of this stuff because you're clairvoyant.
Mm.
Okay. Now they see a thing like this UFO thing, and guess what? It expands makes your view of reality more elastic.
Yeah,
okay?
It changes you.
It changes you. Okay, my first bona fide sighting was when I was 12. We saw a sphere on a late August afternoon, a couple of weeks before school started. When we started driving away from it, I got up in the back window of that Chevy Impala and went, "Who are you guys? Who are you guys?"
Right.
And when he left, it was one of these things.
Woo!
Okay, and that changed me. Okay, when I was 12, that got me and my mother. We don't talk about anything else civilly. I'm disowned and disinherited, for God's sakes. Not because I'm a tranny. No, that has rubbed things the wrong way. I'm disowned and disinherited because I'm a witch. Who knew?
Right.
I'm considered a very, very revered mystic in certain circles, but let it go at that. But the bottom line is this. This kind of an experience changes you. It is what we would normally call a spiritual experience.
Right.
Okay. So the more people are saying, why are we seeing so much more UFOs now? Now, when we came out with our book in 2017, UFO community wrote us and why didn't you go back 40 years instead of back only 15 years? Why didn't you go back 40 years? Because we went 2001 to 2015 in the later book 2001 to 2020.
Okay.
A 20-year sample, and that's where we're stopping. We did our measurement of science, a 20-year sample of the 21st century.
Right.
But when we did the pink book, we went back 40 years, back to 1960. It's 1960 to 2000.
Okay.
Both databases were very gracious. They gave us the information. And guess what? We only wanted to know dates and times. That's all we did. We didn't even want the stories. Just we want to know where and when.
Right.
And guess what? It amounted to 15,156 sightings for that 40 years. Now that sounds like a lot. That's an average of 200 to 300 a year. I've got 15,000 in 2012, 2013, and 2014 each year by themselves. From 2001 to 2020, baby, if those were the golden years of UFOs, we are in the platinum age of UFOs.
Yeah. And a lot of the skeptics, i.e. Mick West and all those, types, the easiest thing they go to, it's a drone. Or it's an illusion, like an optical illusion that happens through the camera.
Atmospheric anomaly. Oh,
yeah,
I heard one the other day. Oh, Cheryl, it's plasma.
Oh, right. It has to be plasma. That right. Balls of plasma that 90-degree angle turns. Completely believable. Some of the skeptic reasoning is more far-fetched than the actual you
hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, what is it go? Swamp gas, that kind of stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? You then what you do is you make people feel stupid, right? And
that was the intent.
Yeah, there's
the
this
intent
discourse.
was to make it so silly and make fun of everybody. Okay. And so nobody wants to get that stigma. And that's why we're 50 years behind, because Dr. Condon back in 1968 told Congress, there's nothing to this. There's no threat to national security. Nothing can be garnered that would be of any benefits to our country and our economy. Okay. And what people did not know, and what the Air Force hierarchy did not tell him, what they did not tell him about the missiles being shut down by this stuff.
Like that. What the fuck is a fucking national security concern if that's not? Right?
It was too highly classified. He didn't have a need to know.
Right.
So Congress doesn't do anything. So when we started having these pilots in 2004, Nimitz and all these guys, I interviewed some of those sailors a couple of years ago. And some of these guys almost lost their marriages because they had their reality shaken. The guys on that radar ship in their combat information center, their reality was shattered. And they were sitting there going, oh my God, this is real. Oh my God, this is real. And then they get back into port and they can't tell their families, and their wives start looking at the fact that they're all twitchy all of a sudden and say, okay, who is she? You know, that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And I talked to one of the chief petty officers, and he told me a number of his troops almost lost their marriages over this stuff because they couldn't tell anybody and they couldn't get counseling about it.
Kevin Day lost his marriage, was basically ousted, forced into retirement because of it was more like a joke. You know, on some of those, on the aircraft carriers, they have the comics.
Yeah.
So, he was being made fun of, all that kind of stuff. And it drove him to a bad place. And the part of the story that he tells that changed my perspective on everything was, he said, what if they actually did land, tomorrow, and it was no longer a debate. It's there. And every single person on Earth was forced into what he was forced into, right? This paradigm changing event. That could be a problem. So.
Oh, I can go there with you too.
Yeah. Is disclosure a day with a capital D? No. Or is it a process?
You're on Twitter.
Yes.
Okay, dig down into my profile and dig down quite a few pages. You'll see some maps of the United States with the counties filled in, okay? But the write-up, I did one that was sent to Twitter addresses to journalists. I did one that was targeted to the helping therapist community. I did one to the anthropology community and say, when are you going to start mapping and documenting the experiencers in the United States? Okay. And psychology community. A friend of mine who's a therapist, both of us wrote the New York State Department of the New York State Society of Social Workers. Not that one. Look for the ones with the United States on it. Scroll down a little bit more. Keep going. No, it's got to be bad. Keep going. There you go. There's one. That one right there was targeted to the journalist community. Okay. If you scroll down a little further, okay, there should be another one here. I actually had a write-up with that one right there. It said, U.S. Congress recently indicated that the UFOs and UAPs are not from our world. Millions of Americans have been touched by these beings. It's time that the therapist community start getting informed about the scale and the needs of the experiencer community. This is the old school trans activist saying, this is how I'm going to go to bat for the experiencers.
Wow.
Okay. And I did this one here for the psychological community, reached out to the psych people, okay, the licensed psychiatrists. And we did another one there for the, I did one out to Hollywood producers.
Okay. So you seem to be, advocating for the civilian. Right.
Civilian side, start talking to us. We're not kooks, nuts, and crackpots. We've learned a lot about this stuff, and there's a very real problem with this PTSD we're talking about here. I have talked to people. I went 2013, 2014 timeframe of the Arizona conference, UFO Congress.
Okay.
And I was down there in press credentials. And I noticed in the program, everything goes on at the convention from about 9 o'clock in the morning to about 5 o'clock in the afternoon with a break lunch, okay? But I noticed in the calendar, there was a little meeting scheduled at 7 o'clock in the morning. and it went to like 8:30, and it was a meeting for experiencers.
Oh.
It was kind of like an AA meeting for
I was going to
experiencers.
say, it sounds like an AA meeting.
Yeah. And they said press is not welcome. Well, the second year I was there, I went to see Yvonne, the lady who was the therapist who acts as a moderator. And I asked, I said, look, I'm trying to learn. I won't out anybody. I might write about the experience, but I won't write about what anybody,
right.
I won't out anybody.
No names or stories. Yeah.
We just want to, my wife and I just want to learn. They said, fine, come. So we went there. Now, please understand, I had been a victim of all the upper cable channel stories. Oh, I got probed by the aliens. It was a terrible experience. This whole thing, right?
Right.
So I go into this meeting. Linda's going with me, and we both had this attitude. We're probably going to meet 25 or 30 people crying in their coffee they got probed. That's what we thought. I get in there. It's 150, 175 people. The meeting has all the energy of a tent revival. And the people were up. They were energetic, encouraging. If you got a story, come on, stand up, put your hand up. Tell us what happened to you, because we probably had the same thing. We may have been there with you, Right. Okay. And I'm going, oh my God, this is a different paradigm than these TV programs are showing.
Right.
Now, let's see, 2000, I wrote a script. Remember, I went to film school. Okay. I wrote a script, a pilot script called Touched. And in fact, I've got the entire first season of 15 shows synopsised out. And I wrote the entire pilot script. And I sent it out to 2 different producers, and all they could do is find fault. I said, can't you just look at it as a starting point?
Right.
You don't know anything about this. Well, it should be a comedy. These experiencers, that's a silly topic. Now, that was 2 years ago. Understand, the world has changed a bit. Congress has said these things are not from our world.
Right.
So I'm out pitching right now, trying to get somebody to look at this thing and say, guys, there's a dramatic series here. A real good one.
Yeah, you could explore very human things like PTSD, anxieties.
I got the pilot deals with some guy and 2 guys. This is based on a real story, real people. And fire season, these guys were in high school. They were junior members of the volunteer fire department. Some bright thing comes down. The kids 20 miles away saw this bright thing in the valley out by the fire towers. And these guys radioed into the headquarters at the fire department and said, there's something out here. And the radios went dead. They went out there. They found them both unconscious.
Oh, no.
Blood pressure through the roof. They lowered them down on the fire towers, took them to the hospital. Doctors checked them for drugs. Nothing. They were clean. Woke up 17, 20 hours later. Funny thing. The side that was facing of them that was looking at the UFO, they were very, very badly sunburned.
Almost.
Okay. And the radio, the tube radio, this is not transistors or integrated circuits. The tube radio, this happened in 1970. The tube radio they were using was completely cooked. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. That, and the way I wrote the story, here we are 40, 50, 60 years later. And one of the guys is at a wake for the other guy that was up there with him. And the other guy's laid out in the casket, and there are different people there in the wake. And some guy says, I know who that person is. He saw a UFO back in the day. He goes over and makes a big scene at the wake. And that's how the ordinary life part of it begins, Wow. And it takes this person getting into counseling, But I've got other episodes and these are based on real cases. Guy was out walking his dog in his backyard. He's on the outer edge.
This would be like an anthology, each episode being a different story.
Oh yeah, the second one, the teaser at the end of the first one. Guy's walking his dog outside. Wow, Susie, look at the stars. Aren't they great tonight? Come on, get your business done. All of a sudden, the thing comes over and says, "Holy God, look at that!" And he's found the next day in the middle of a farmer's field, 270 miles away in central Pennsylvania, in women's clothes. How many experiencers have come back in somebody else's clothes?
Now that's something that's real.
Yeah.
Wow. It's almost like they dressed them like.
They didn't. They just put some clothes back on the kid and get him out of here.
give her the other girl's clothes. Who cares?
but it was a guy, you know. So,
Right.
okay, and then see, there are stories in there about I drew these some real things, you know. And I had Kathleen Martin read this draft script. She gave me notes. I had Susie Hansen in New Zealand, who's a well-known experiencer. She took it and gave me notes, and I went in and did the final script, sent it back to them, told them, take a look. Minor changes. The story was fine. It was about the hypnosis part that was not right. Okay. And I corrected that to their. Yeah, the regression. They told me what I was doing wrong. And that was the deal. And they looked at the final script and said, perfect, do it. It's a dramatic series. Wow. And so we did. So there's theories like there's one like you go someplace, you're at a UFO convention, and somebody walks up to you and says, I know you from someplace.
And they were both up there together?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or the guy, the one guy's wife is looking at like the 23andMe or Ancestry, and suddenly he's got 30 kids out there that he doesn't know about. And
that's not, listen, I mean,
they took him when he was 15 and they took his sperm, you know, this kind of stuff. So, I mean, these are, that's an imaginary case, but it's a very real probability when you think of the fact that they've been making hybrids, you know. So I have interviewed 3 women who have had hybrids.
Right. And this is, and you know, there's no offense to anyone who's experienced something like that. I think, however, in order to get this pushed into the mainstream where it is no longer stigmatized, we must be careful about the abduction stories. That's what's going to put people over the edge, because that's going to scare people. And, you know, because if in reality,
okay.
And I know.
Do you know what the log line is? Do you know what the log line?
Well, no, I don't know how to face the problem. That's the point.
Do you know what a log line is?
No, a log line.
Log line. When you write a script, you put
okay.
a one-liner.
Yes.
Okay. That's supposed to encapsulate the thing.
Yes.
The log line for touched is, have you been touched by extraterrestrials?
So we're just very right there.
Makes you wonder, because a lot of people don't know they've been touched.
Yes, and that because of the, you know, essentially.
I didn't know. I was being treated for PTSD of the combat type, and the therapist had me down in hypnosis, and then she brought me out of it, and she looked like she stuck her finger in a 220 light socket, you know. Okay, so I'm not going there any further than that, but that's what I'm telling you.
Right.
We got other people out there who have had out of this world healthcare.
Right. Seemingly healed.
Or healed in something that looks like our techniques, but it was done very expertly.
Right,
you know, that type of thing. And me and
well, I mean, you know Travis. So the story. Like,
I know Travis personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Travis, he is very adamant in his explanation that he thinks that they were correcting the problem of inadvertently
killing them.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
So if we look at
I was coming back from in 2019. I had a 3-hour shuttle ride from Laughlin, where the convention was.
Okay. Back
to Vegas so I could catch my flight home. And I was back there with Dr. Oh God, he's a medical doctor. God, I'm dropping names tonight. Don't get old.
Not Stephen Greer, right?
No. I'm just pulling a blank on his name. But him and I had a 3-hour talk about different people that had been touched by them from a medical standpoint. Okay. And one case we were discussing was this one guy who had he had very bad trouble with his legs. Okay. And he had an experience, and now his legs had the scars like he had arthroscopic surgery, but now he's corrected.
Wow.
And he didn't go into the hospital for any kind of surgery.
Right. He never scheduled that appointment.
Right. So
do you think that there, one of the things that I think about is, do we, your ability of clairvoyancy and practicing that over time obviously has improved it, but do you think that there is untapped potential in every single person and we just haven't got there yet? And
Oh, I know so. I know
Right.
so. I got a new class starting of new witches starting here in a couple of weeks, and I already put the word out that this is an advanced class.
Right.
And the thing I'm going to be focusing on is actually improving a little less ritual and dressing up and lighting candles, and a little bit more effort aimed at developing we use remote viewing techniques. We teach remote viewing techniques for being able to reach out and touch something.
That's something I've always wanted to learn.
And it works. I've taught about 5 classes over the last 20 years, and don't ask me how I know how to do it. I can't tell you. But the bottom line...
I think I know.
No, you don't. But the bottom line is, one of the cute things that come out of it is every one of the classes that I've taught, these were civilian classes, every one of the classes, one of the target cards always made it into the queue. I didn't know where it was in the queue. I just knew it was out there, a bag of 150 envelopes. One of the target cards was the alien base on the backside of the moon. Now, if it's all baloney and all hearsay and just our stupid imaginations, why did 5 different classes put their pens on and say, wherever you sent us, they didn't like us being there?
What? No way.
Every class. And that was when I wrapped up each class at the end of the year. And obviously we did it twice a month for a year.
Oh.
And I looked at him and I said, look at all the cool places I sent you. I sent you to Mars to find one of the rovers. I sent you to Neil Armstrong. One of my early remote viewing classes, the lady couldn't do it. She threw her pen down. She said, I can't do this. I said, well, what did you perceive? I perceived a bunch of clowns bouncing around and carrying an American flag. And the target was Neil Armstrong planting a flag on the moon. Now, remember what that footage looked like? Everybody bouncing around, right? I had another target card with the same person a couple of weeks later. We're doing a training session. And she's like, I can't do this. And she threw her pen down. And I said, well, what was your perception? She says, jumping white broccoli. I said, okay. What? Jumping white broccoli. So we opened the target card, and it was a poodle. And think of what a really properly trimmed poodle looks like, a big hunk of broccoli. Okay. And it was a poodle jumping up for a treat.
Oh my God.
Okay,
well, we know the U.S. government has put money and time into remote viewing.
Yeah, it went. Everybody thought it went away in '95. It just went dark.
Of course, right? Especially after the whole MK Ultra.
I can't talk to that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't tell you.
It wasn't a good look.
But I'll tell you one thing. The last 2 classes I had, one of the target cards was the White House, and we found out that I don't know if you know the term, but the White House is warded. Magically warded.
Yeah. Sigils.
Yeah.
So,
well, when the remote viewers tried to access the White House, they couldn't.
So you can ward against it? Theoretically?
Not in any book I read.
So where would they get such information?
I don't know.
Right. Begs the question.
But if you think about this a minute, that many cultures and governments going back thousands of years always had their mages and their magical ministers and head brazier and all that kind of thing,
seers. And
who's to say what kind of skills that people like me have are working for the government just in that kind of thing. Okay, we don't know, because there's an element in the country that doesn't want to know, because they're all locked up in biblical natures and things. And that's evil stuff, that type of thing. So
you've just stumped. I don't know if this is something you've thought about.
I just upped Danny, didn't I?
Yeah. So you just stumbled across it, and this is
what we call taking a step into the woo.
Right. Very much down the rabbit hole. On this one.
Go ahead, ask the question.
Do you think that the secrecy and everything that's encompassed in that is a result of governments not trusting the civilians, or is it based in financial greed and that kind of stuff? Is it
all the above?
Right, because there's almost this contract that's signed between a government and its citizens. I'll give you protection, be loyal to us, back. But with all these lies that we now know have been told, they've given us 5 different excuses for Roswell. We know that someone's lying now. Maybe it's not an alien craft. It definitely is, but say it's not. Well, you've also given us 4 different stories. It's hard to take anything you say at face value. Part of me thinks that it's more leaning towards the financial greed. The we don't want to give Russia or China, because if they came out tomorrow and the president said we are not alone, we have recovered craft, and there is technology that's being reverse engineered, on a global scale, someone would be like, well, you can't keep that a secret. That's because you could change economies overnight.
Okay. Let me explain something. There are military secrets, and military intelligence and all this kind of stuff is probably the most fleeting things, because nothing stays secret for long.
Right.
Okay. But the real spy game is not with militaries and governments. The real spy game is within industry and commerce. The Japanese back there in their heyday in the 70s and 80s were well known for acquiring information and stealing technical information that can be turned into a product and make money. Okay, so you've got that. Okay, that's one of the best intelligence games out there, are the industrial spies. Okay, and their trick is not to shoot anybody; it's just not to get caught. That's all, and to sell to the highest bidder. Okay, so I lend some credence to the idea that there may be some technology floating around out there in private circles left over from somebody scavenging one of these down craft over the years that they're not ready to show anybody yet.
Okay.
I accept that. I accept that, because look, Tesla's technology was sat on for 100 years.
Very much.
Okay.
Very much.
Okay. So a lot of stuff gets sat on for market reasons.
Right.
Okay. That's the plain truth.
Well, how long do we sit on this one? That's a very weird question.
I wrote a story a couple of years ago on my news column, and I wrote, in fact, it was the only story. I was never censored. Okay, 237 articles. I was not censored, but I did have one column that I wrote that they spiked. Okay. Spiking, censored means they might take something out of your stuff or change your words. Spiking is the editor puts it on a big spike on his desk, and it's not going to be published.
Because you breached something?
Well, what I wrote was, the article was around 2016, about 3 years into it. And I basically wrote this snarky article about what would happen after disclosure. Mm-hmm. Okay, the president's up there with his chiefs, maybe the vice president and key White House aides, and the leadership of Congress, and maybe somebody from the Defense Department, and say, we are not alone. Okay, what's going to happen? Suddenly, the aliens are going to be the darlings on Good Morning America. We're going to have all kinds of things like these things. Travis Walton and Whitley Strieber having reconciliation meetings on Good Morning America with the
Bob
guys who took them.
Lazar,
Yeah, well, I don't know about Bob Lazar, but the bottom line, you get the idea.
I do.
Okay. The aliens are going to be the cool thing. Oh my God, they're going to impact fashion. They're going to impact cosmetics and perfume, alien sense in the perfume. Every aspect of our culture will be contaminated from the content of our earth culture and our art. All of our stuff will be influenced and contaminated with their culture. And I think ET, from an anthropology, the books I've read on anthropology, they really don't want to contaminate our culture. They want to study us in our petri dish,
Right.
and be fair to us. And so there's this aspect of not telling everybody up front, but it's getting to the point where it seems like ET is pushing disclosure.
Your honest belief?
Yes.
Because you'd have to think.
With everything that's been going on with the Navy, I mean, one of the best pictures was about 2 years ago. There was that picture from 2019. It was an infrared picture taken by the USS Omaha. It was a sphere. I had a journalist from the West Coast called me up and says, are spheres a thing? I said, yes, 17,151 of them in 20 years. And the guy about fell off his
Definitely
chair.
a thing.
Yeah, they're a thing, So, yeah, we're still waking people up to this thing. And one of my biggest complaints is the general media community will not loosen up on this thing. They think, we got to have a more credible, and they're looking for a level of credibility they're not going to be able to get.
Yeah, you can convict someone for their entire life on an eyewitness testimony in the court of the United States. You can.
I've got 167,632 eyewitness accounts.
Yeah, which is the burden of proof has had to have shifted from the experiencer to the societal that grand scheme of things. It's not on us to give you
the key to that thing is you have to discredit the witness. Oh, Mrs. Frank, were you wearing your bifocals or were you wearing your reading glasses when you allegedly saw Tom beat his wife over the head with that sledgehammer?
Right.
Okay, that's how you discredit the thing.
Exactly.
The bottom line is we're very close. People say, well, the government hasn't told us. Well, I don't know if they're expecting the president to get on all three channels or, and tell and say,
going to happen.
No. Here's the problem. They have been telling us. I published all my columns in 2000. The paper went out of business in 2020. I published all my columns because I owned them. The paper let me get them off the server. Okay. And one of the front pages, the preface page, was all these guys, that general back in the 40s that said they're not of our world, they're beyond our technology. Truman saying, if they're real, they're not from this planet. There were like 20 guys down to Alessandro and Chris Mellon.
So basically,
it's been out there. They've been telling us this stuff for years. Now the Congress is owning up to it.
Right. So basically reading, but without saying, my fellow Americans, we are not alone. They're saying, something to the degree
No. Here's what the problem is. I reached out a couple of newspapers here. I'm a journalist. I said, look, I can give you the story. I guarantee you will sell newspapers and page views with this story. I've got all the data on Ohio. Crickets. Because they'll believe those swaggering intelligence guys and those swaggering pilots. But, this is some person done over here. She was crackpot a few years ago. She's just trying to cash in on this stuff. They forget that some of the best people were in any field were somebody who was a civilian and who was doing it as a vocation before they were doing it as a profession. Okay? Because,
and that's the thing is the passion, right? The passion that you have is unrivaled. your drive to seek answers and data and the truth, that will always weigh more to me than a pilot who sees something potentially that they can't directly. It's not that the pilot's wrong. It's just someone like you who's data driven and all. Like, here's the I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'm going to give you the equation. You come to your own conclusion, right? So let you directly apprehend your own answer. But here's all the numbers I've collected. Yeah, the numbers you have are staggering.
And the funny thing is if you do go back to 1916, add it up with the stuff I have for now, so late 20th century into 21st century, okay, that would give us 60 years worth of data. Okay, that works out to 180,000 reports. Okay, and so and we learned things from that. There's still that little 7-year humpy thing that goes, that the sightings go up and down, that type of thing. There was all of this stuff. Yeah. We discovered, by the way, I should make for your audience. Let me give you the drivers. Now, a lot of people knee jerk and say, well, population's a driver. It's around all the big cities. And the big cities have a big count. But the funny thing we discovered was that the majority of the sightings reports happen in the hours of darkness, from 6 o'clock at night till about 11:30 at night, with the peak being between 8 and 10:30.
Is that just because of visibility?
No, it's because it's leisure time.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, they're not looking down.
So the leisure time is, where does this happen? Does it happen in the core downtown city where all the light pollution is? No, it happens in the suburbs, the bedroom communities, the unincorporated communities further out, in the rural communities. And we have documented this by plotting hours of the day and then zip codes in a single county. And if you look at the capital city in that county, you'll see, oh yeah, it looks like tons of sightings. That's where they all are. But if you look at the hours of the day after dark, it's in the suburbs and those outer communities, which is where all 68 to 70% of the sightings are. So principal drivers are population, temperate weather, latitude plays a difference, leisure time, hours of darkness, observer access to broadband. The reason we have so many, in 2000, there were 600 reported sightings between both databases. In 2001, there were 3,500. Yeah. Why? We rolled out broadband in the major cities and their related suburbs. I was an IT manager. I was able to pull those kinds of charts up. And then there's things that don't happen in every state. They're called secondary influencers. Proximity to large bodies of water. What's this like? Okay, if you look at the states around the Great Lakes, the sightings are in the many thousands. Move 2 states away, they're in the low hundreds. Okay, that is partly because of a lack of broadband in those states, because they're poor, or they're rural states or rural counties. Okay, there is let's see, large bodies of water. Toxic ecosystems and proximity to toxic ecosystems and proximity to geological fault lines. Now, this is from my researcher friend Tom Conwell in upstate New York. You should have him on. Tom is up in Troy, New York. I can get you contact information.
I'd love to.
Okay, for that, Tyler. He took our white book and started plotting them on a huge map of the United States on his wall. Destroyed the wall with the pins, but he. But he tracked it against toxic ecosystems, not just your average toxic. See, we're talking dead coal mines, dead oil fields, dead strip mines, burning coal mines. There's like 44 burning coal mines in the country, that type of thing. Heavily polluted lakes, heavily polluted. I mean, the kind that are being looked at by the Superfund, that kind of thing. Okay, bad, really bad. The ET seems to be extremely interested in our waste areas. Okay. Remember, they said, take care of your planet. High visibility media reports. So remember that day I told you, April 16th, 2008?
Yep.
Okay. There was that. And there was the immediate press, local press, never bubbled up to the national. that's another thing. It never bubbles up to the national. It used to be you had a sighting, it always got up on the wire and everybody did a story about it. Doesn't happen like that anymore. But in the days after that, and I was able to do this National UFO Reporting Center easily because it's publicly available.
Mhm.
I looked at the reports, and almost the spike of reports in Indiana were copycats to what happened on April 16th. They were reports of a retro nature from 2 months, a week before, 2 years before. So people probably read about it in the paper, saw that people could report to National UFO, and what you got was a slug of retro reporting.
Right. Oh.
Okay, but I got the idea from Project Blue Book about the high visibility media reports generates, but we wanted to find out, was it copycat stuff, or was it copycat Me Too stuff, or was it something else? And from our evidence, we realized it was people going back and doing retro reporting because they knew where to report.
Right.
And then there's this thing we call the generational effect. The generational effect is this. Los Angeles County has more sightings than 39 individual states. Maricopa County, Arizona has more sightings than 36 individual states by themselves. Okay. Now, LA County had the Battle of A in February of 1942, shooting all kinds of rounds in the air, killing people in rounds fell, blew up and things like this. Okay. Grandpa told us about the Battle of LA. Maybe if we look up, we'll see something. Go to Maricopa County, Arizona, Phoenix Lights. Okay. Mom and Dad talked about the Phoenix Lights. Maybe if we look up, we'll see it. There's a cultural imperative to watch the sky. And that's what we think is driving this.
It's on. I mean, that's a huge, revelation amongst data, but specifically, it happened. I can't be outside without, frequently looking upwards now, right? In the past year, 2 years, whenever I'm outside walking the dog, I never have my eye, down for too long. I can sing, it's almost infectious. Once you catch this bug, you just can't get away from it after, too much thought. Do you think that, the stigma fading lately around the UFO topic could be a bad thing in the short term, but, maybe.
No. Okay, people have been calling me up lately saying, "Oh my God, we're seeing all kinds of UFOs in Washington State." Okay, no. Washington State is not ground zero, as some people are reporting, because they're only looking at New Fork data. New Fork data is skewed to the west to some degree. And Washington State has always been in the top 10. And up until 2006, Washington State used to be like the number one state. Okay. But different years, after 2006, California, Florida, and Texas were locked in that order at the top of the scale. And then the other top 7 states were playing musical chairs, except for Arizona. It seems to have consistently held the number 7 slot for years. Who knows why? But the states changed their patterns around year after year. But the bottom line is we've got a lot of sightings right now, but we're on the ups. Remember I told you there was that 6 or 7 year humpy thing? We're on the upslide of that. Remember in 2013, 2014, it fell off by 30%. Over the next 4 years, it fell off by 30% a year approximately.
Wow.
Okay. It bottomed out in 2017, 2018. In 2018, MUFON data started to show a very tiny tick upwards at the bottom of the pit. I took 2019 off to work on my other writing projects because I knew there wasn't going to be much to write about.
Right.
Okay. And then in the spring of, just before we went into lockdown, late February, early March, George Knapp called me up and he says, "Hey, Cheryl, is your phone ringing off the hook? I'm getting calls up the wazoo. They were back, I said, "Really?" So I said, "Let me check," because by this time, by 2020, I had already built a mathematical model for the sightings. Okay, so I was able to look at New Fork data alone. It's a 60-40 ratio with New Fork is about 60% and change, and MUFON is 40% and change, and that type of thing. And I was able to go in, pull 2 months worth of data off of the back pages of New Fork, stick them into the model, and I predicted within 2% where the year was going to shake out.
So
And
you had an advanced knowledge that the year was going to be.
George called me back an hour later and said, "What do you got?" And I said, "This is going to be the best year since 2012." That's what I told him.
Jesus. And I mean, to that,
Aren't numbers wonderful?
That's what I'm saying. That's why we need to start paying more attention to people like you.
But I'm not trying to knock Nick, but she was just. Do we need another convention with Nick? Can't you have a couple of old ladies who did the math?
Right.
You know,
right.
It's not just charts, graphs, and numbers. We've got the secrets of the universe here, and nobody seems to be interested in it.
Yeah, they only want to talk to the, former Ministry of Defense.
They want to hear sighting stories,
Yeah.
So this is. I'm not complaining. It's just it gets annoying. Now, COVID did hurt us very badly. We had to do what we did virtually. I was contacting the desert, had me under contract, and I did a presentation for them. And I'm doing presentations all the time on Zoom. Different local clubs have me do it because, again, people are still feeling uncomfortable about going. And in 2 weeks, the week of the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, I'll be up at Lake Houghton in northern Michigan presenting. Me and Linda are going to be up there presenting together. So.
I would love,
That's UFO Contact is the name of the conference.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about these and attend a couple that you'd be at.
You should.
And you have people like George Knapp calling you. George Knapp is on my list of the 10 people that once I get interviewed, I will feel complete in a sense.
He's had me on Coast to Coast twice.
Right.
And during basically during the lockdown, August 20, George Norrie flew me out to Arizona to be on his Gaia program. His producers called me, "Would you be willing to fly even though we got this COVID lockdown?" And I says, "I'll mask up, glove up, I'll wear a spacesuit, whatever you want." So I went out there and we talked about data on his Gaia program.
Gaia, I actually just signed up for it. It's a great, it's got a plethora of things you can choose from. It's a good platform.
Well, check out George's program. I think it's Beyond. I don't remember the whole lot, but I did the show. It's either being marketed as 2020 or 2021, but I did an interview on there, so it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
I know, we're gearing towards that time that you had, you said 2 hour mark roughly, but
I'm running out of steam, but okay. Give me your last question.
This is the question, right? So, if you had to use your best judgment, would you say that UFOs or UAPs are from another galaxy, dimension, or some other idea? Kind of like what you said, someone traveling.
All the above.
That was again. So all the above. Now, the implications of that are
just because we don't know how to do it doesn't mean they can't. I have had physics professor tell me, "Oh, they can't get here from there." I've had newspaper editors and news directors say they can't get here from there. I said, it took Columbus 2.5 to 3 months to get here. It took Magellan a year to go around the world. Our space station does it every 45 minutes. Okay, we fly to Europe in 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah,
I flew to Italy from Baltimore in 8 hours. Come on, just because we don't know how to do it doesn't mean they can't. And by the way, we got people who are in real legitimate science that think we're getting very close to being able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, look at all the things that are happening. Look at the images from the James Webb Space Telescope that
Wasn't that awesome?
truly remind us of how small we are. Those are the moments I
That's
love.
that's the line I liked from Sagan a long time ago. He said there's billions and billions of galaxies. Webb's showed us there are trillions and trillions of galaxies.
And
And
that
I teach my mystical students, the atoms in your body are connected to everything, everywhere, every when. Now you hear about entanglement, but the English definition of entanglement is like this.
Mm-hmm.
The German word for it is like this.
Okay. A lot
Okay.
more.
And we are entangled with everything. That's why remote viewing works, because we are connected to the great consciousness, all the non-local information of all the knowledge that ever was or ever will be is there, and we can touch it.
Okay. And so you think there
And
is
I teach my mystical students how to do it all the
right.
time.
So I mean, you essentially, that everything is connected. Like, all points in time and space are,
The future aspects get a little shaky because
right.
only because well, from our perspective, hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there are multiple futures. Okay, but as somebody who's, I'll give you an example. I was in a shelling in Vietnam, and I really thought, you got to understand, when I was in Vietnam, I was 102 pounds. I was a tiny little person. Okay. And I had these 250-pound sergeants falling on top of me as we were diving into the sand. And I really, really at one point thought, this is it. This is where I'm going to die. And that's where I had the premonition of my marriage ceremony to a woman I hadn't met yet from 2 years in the future.
Jesus.
And I saw the people, every single one of them, right down to every single one of them that was in the real event, sitting in the church. And the odd thing about it was, you'll love this, the best man was sitting by himself on the right side of the church, and everybody else was sitting on the left-hand side of the church. So one half of the church was empty, but it was a small wedding.
Right.
Everybody knew everybody else. Both families knew, and their friends, everybody knew everybody else. So they all sat on the side. But in the dream, that didn't make any sense. That seemed so surreal.
It did. Oh my God. So
okay. And I didn't meet the lady until about a year later.
To end on something as poetic seems, perfect, but what's it like to see something and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, we'll call it, you're experiencing the same thing? Does it feel weird to have already known it was coming, or to know, did it shake you a little?
Yeah, it shook me a lot. I was already nervous enough to go out there and get married, let alone to walk out there, step out onto the altar in this little country Catholic church and see this whole thing unfold in front of me like I had seen 2 years before in Vietnam. I've had I had dreams, all the really hazardous things that I thought were going to kill me. I got to see the future.
Right.
Okay. And I've seen many other things. And a lot of it's trivial, but the thing is that if you're in the state of mind that people like me who are trained mystics are in, it happens to you a lot. Okay. And don't ask me for lottery numbers.
No.
I used to mark up other people's dog track sheets when I was in Florida. I can't do it for myself, but if I mark them up, they always had a good day. So,
wow. This is where we're gonna, we'll end it and everything. But
that's my closing word. You are connected to everything, everywhere, every when. And if ET is trying to teach us anything from what we've learned from the other experiencers, they're teaching us, and Ray Hernandez will say this, they're teaching us to be mystics. They want us to be spiritual and to be connected and ascended.
And evolve into something better, potentially, hopefully, I hope. I
Just
really
look
do.
past all of our racism and all the other problems we have, because we are not alone.
I don't think we ever have been.
No, we haven't been. Back to your Babylonian science. The reptilians were teaching us everything. They were our teachers.
I mean, it's kind of
They
ironic
they
that,
they taught us how to make beer.
yeah, it's ironic to me that, all these cultures have remarkably similar stories of,
Okay,
these.
one more that goes with it. These days on the internet, you see this. If you see a picture of a reptilian, it's usually overly muscular, brown, looks like he hasn't had a case of prunes in 50 years, and
Right.
that
Yeah,
kind
and
of
he's
thing.
growling almost. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Maybe some species are like that, but the people I've interviewed that have interacted with them say they're soft-spoken, they're gentle, they're enlightened, and they have a sense of humor.
Wow. I think that's going to be the most revelation, the biggest aspect to it that people won't understand is that they would have potentially a sense of humor. Like
The
maybe,
grays are the ones that creep me out, but
yeah, honestly, me too. Me too. But so you have your books, all your books are available on Amazon?
if you go to the Amazon, the book search on Amazon, if you put UFO Costa, Costa, you'll find the white book, UFO Sightings Desk Reference 2001 to 2015. If you'll see the pink book, which is 2000 UFO Sightings Desk Reference 2001 to 2020. There's another one there called UFO Beat. That is, if you like stories, that are all 238 columns that I wrote from 2013 to 2019 when the paper folded.
Awesome. Cheryl, I really.
And if you like plays and if you like short stories, I've always specialized as a short story writer. So a couple of my, a book of my short stories, I'm running one up there called Charmaine's Tales of Wonder. It's a little green book. It's cheap. If you like weird, off the wall kind of Twilight Zone kind of stuff, it's a cute book to have. And there's two more in the chute. So there are two more in the pipeline.
Right. So yeah, everyone definitely check all the books that are available, and you still do your radio show, right?
I do a program. This is my third talk show in many years. This one is in the UK. It's called Mystical Mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have guests on. They just, producers figured out that people just wanted to hear me, so I just do as little as 15 minutes, as much as 30, and I talk about nothing about mysticism. I am literally teaching, according to the last report my producer gave me, I got 150,000 listeners a month, and that's an awful lot of students to teach mystical stuff too.
Well, one day, hopefully, we'll look back and we'll think about the Great Awakening, right? When society woke up.
One can hope. One can hope.
So
it has been a pleasure to be with
you.
you.
It really has been, and I hope this is the first of many, because with this topic,
have me back anytime.
There's just so much, and anyone you can put me in touch with to keep this motivation going, I'm greatly appreciative. And if I can ever help with anything, of course I will. You can find Cheryl on Twitter. I believe what was your handle was at Costa_writer.
Yep.
So
at _writer.
Yeah. So all right, guys. Until next time, keep your eyes in the sky.